Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, Bad Bunny's love letter to Puerto Rico. It's all in the album's name. I should have taken more pictures. How this deep dive into memories and history is reimagining the island's political future. I'm Natasha Del Toro, and this is The Take. When I first listened to Bad Bunny's album, it was really emotional for me. I mean, it's so nostalgic. So it was surprising that this has resonated with so many people around the world because it seems to me so specific about the Puerto Rican experience. I mean, it's this little island in the middle of the Caribbean with so much heart, and yet faces so many challenges that it makes you wonder, will this culture even be able to survive? As my late Uncle Pablo used to say, que en paz descanse, in order to know where you are going, you need to know where you've been. And maybe that's why Bad Bunny thought it was so important to weave in the island's history. Which brings us to our guest today.
For me, it was incredible. I just got a call from the Bad Bunny team, and they said that Benito was interested in using his platform to amplify Puerto Rican history. I never in my life expected to have this sort of platform in my career. Benito is very adamant that this is a project by and for Puerto Ricans. Hola, my name is Jorell Meléndez-Badillo, and I'm an assistant professor of Latin American and Caribbean history at the University of Wisconsin, and I'm coming to you today from Santurce, Puerto Rico. I recently published a book, A Broad History of Puerto Rico, from pre-Columbian times to Bad Bunny.
Jorell, it's such a pleasure to have you here today on The Take. Yo soy Boricua. I don't know if you can tell by my shirt that I'm wearing. So I'm super excited to talk with you today about this album. I have personally been listening to it on repeat and dancing around in my room. But I guess one of my first questions when I realized that you had worked with Bad Bunny was, what was Bad Bunny's goal in bringing you in? I mean, it's not every day that a Latin pop star is enlisting the help of a historian.
Absolutely. And I have to start by saying that I also have this song the record on repeat since it came out. I also dance to it in my room, and it's great to be in dialogue and in community with a fellow Boricua. In terms of Bad Bunny and what he wanted, I think that he wanted to amplify Puerto Rican history. He was very adamant is that he wanted the history of Puerto Rico to be known. So he understood the platform that he has, and he wanted to use it, not only the unknown histories, but also general histories of Puerto Rico from pre-Columbian times to the present moment. I think that this is not only a musical record, this is a cultural and historic project. It's not only interested in experimenting with sounds, but also honoring the legacy of salsa, bomba, plena, aguinaldo, and all those rhythms of Puerto Rican music and culture.
And what exactly did you do on this album, on this project?
So I was in charge of writing historical narratives that accompanied the song's visualizers in YouTube. So artists, in order to monetize out of YouTube, they have these visualizers when they don't have videos for their songs yet. So it's a way for people to listen to the song and have some images. It's sort of like PowerPoint slides. A lot of people have told me that they look very pedagogical. There are some teachers actually in Puerto Rico in the high school and elementary school system that are actually implementing those visualizers in the classroom.
Some of these visualizers, I mean, they have like 30 million plus views on them. And I noticed in the visualizers, there are certain themes that keep coming back up again. You're looking at the history of colonialism and certain movements that have happened on the island, as well as, musical influences. So was there a reason why you all selected these certain themes?
Absolutely. So at first, I thought that what he wanted was the history of niche topics in Puerto Rican history, things that are very unknown, even by historian. But he came back and said, no, the history of Puerto Rico is unknown general histories of Puerto Rico. And he gave me the example of, for example, a lot of people don't know that after the U.S. occupation of 1898, Puerto Rico was ruled by military governors. And that later, Puerto Ricans did not vote for their governors until the 1940s. And so these were the things that he also wanted. He wanted general history. So I had a lot of leeway in the topics that I was able to bring. I am an anti-colonial scholar. I am committed to decolonization. And so in my work, I study anarchism. I study the working classes. So I was able to bring that sort of working class sensibility into these narratives. People don't really learn in school. Like, for example, there's one slide about a 1905 strike, sugarcane strike, and how campesinos, jibaros, and countryside people mobilized. I think that ultimately what I wanted to showcase was the agency of Puerto Ricans throughout our history, that our history is not a history of docility. And I think that the record also has that same sensibility.
For sure. And I mean, and it's also just letting people know that Puerto Rico was first a colony of Spain for 4 centuries and then has been a colony of the U.S., technically a territory, since the Spanish-American War of 1898. So the history deals with colonial themes, and some of those colonial themes are coming up in the songs themselves. I'm thinking about one song in particular that's been generating a lot of attention, Lo que le pasó a Hawaii.
Quieren quitarme el río y también la playa. Quieren el barrio mío y que abuelita se vaya. No, no suelten la bandera ni olviden la Lola. Que no quiero que hagan contigo lo que le pasó a Hawaii.
And it goes like this. They want to take away my river. They want to take away my beach. They want to take my neighborhood and for my grandmother to leave. No, don't let go of the flag or forget our songs. I don't want them to do to you what they did to Hawaii. I've even seen Puerto Ricans hanging the lyrics from the balconies of their homes. Why do you think that song has struck such a nerve?
I think that it captures a shared sentiment among Puerto Ricans that a lot of Puerto Ricans are living through with a series of measures from the state that is seeking to attract millionaires, foreigners, into Puerto Rico. We see rapid gentrification, rapid displacement, massive migration of Puerto Ricans, places where you go and you can not speak in Spanish because they won't understand you, they won't serve you. And so I think it struck a chord with Puerto Ricans because we're living through that. I think it was a brilliant analogy that he used. Hawaii also entered the U.S. orbit in 1898, the same moment that Puerto Rico was colonized. And so in order for Hawaii to become a state, it needed to be first Americanized. And so local peoples were displaced, local culture was co-opted. And so it is a warning call that Bad Bunny is it's giving us of what happened to Hawaii. And so I think that this song has not only struck a chord with Puerto Ricans, but I've also seen in social media people from Venezuela, people from Cuba, people from different parts of the Americas, people from Palestine using this song to talk about what they're living through.
More with Jorell after the break. I heard you mention that in Puerto Rico that you can really feel colonial violence sort of on an everyday level when you're in Puerto Rico. Tell me, how is it that people on the island experience that on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can actually feel it in your everyday. And so it translates to power outages on an almost daily basis. Just to give you an example, my grandmother is an 85-year-old woman that a few days ago or a few weeks ago lost power multiple times.
Nearly 1 million people lost power. The massive blackout came just days after the private U.S. and Canadian company Luma Energy formally took over management of the island's electric grid.
And for days on end, there's a lack to basic necessities. There is a lack to potable water on occasions. There's also an attack on education. Right now, the government of Puerto Rico in the last decade closed more than 400 schools, which has made a huge impact on generations of children. As we speak, there is right now a struggle going on in the University of Puerto Rico when the president of the university announced that they were planning on closing 62 or 64 programs, most of them in the humanities, philosophy, Hispanic studies, history. And so it is an attack on education. And I grew up in a household where they told me that if I talked about independence, it meant that I wanted to be another Haiti, another Cuba, another Dominican Republic. Beyond the xenophobic rhetoric in that statement, there was a real fear of lacking basic necessities, of lacking the basic infrastructure and political freedoms. And we're living through all of that. And independence never arrived. And so that's the colonial violence we live through on an everyday basis.
When we think about the 500,000 people who have left, in a way, it's because they are looking for better economic opportunities off the island, or they can't afford to live there anymore. Look, I live in the diaspora, and I grew up in North Carolina. There were no Puerto Ricans there. So I always had this, when I go back to Puerto Rico, I felt like I was going back home. There were all these family members there that would welcome me at the airport. It was this thing. Every year that passes, there are fewer and fewer people there to do that, but it still feels like home to me. So when I listen to it, it is that nostalgia of this time past, of mi familiare, their warmth. Like, Puerto Ricans are warm. We're warm people. There's something in the family and the culture and the music that really tapped into, it really touched me. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think has been lost in Puerto Rico?
Wow. So I think that part of what has been lost is the people themselves. Part of it is this problem that we've had so many people that have had to leave, not wanting to leave and dreaming of coming back, as Bad Bunny says in one of the lyrics, that we've lost many of our communities. I come back to Puerto Rico. I grew up with my grandparents, and it was 14 brothers and sisters that my grandmother had. A lot of them have passed away, and those that are alive, most of them are in the diaspora. So I grew up also in a household where all of my family members had been part of the diaspora. My grandparents had returned, and now I am part of that Puerto Rican diaspora, which has allowed me to connect with Puerto Ricanness, with my Puerto Ricanness in a particular way. But to your question, I think that what we've lost is the people, and the people are the ones that carry our culture. And by displacing the people, you're displacing Puerto Rican cultures, our memories, our histories.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And sometimes I worry that that culture is going to be lost.
Just like what happened to Hawaii. Because this is structural. This is by design.
When I go to Puerto Rico to visit family or for reporting purposes, I've actually noticed a lot of things that have been changing on the island pretty rapidly, and it's become very Americanized. And as you mentioned, you have these wealthy foreigners, like a lot of them are crypto bros, who are moving in, buying up properties, forcing up the prices of the housing. Rents are skyrocketing now for lower income or working class Puerto Ricans. I thought it was very interesting. I went to Rincon, where I lived as a child, and in some of the establishments there, people didn't even speak Spanish anymore. So how do Puerto Ricans, from Bad Bunny to everyone else, parse that while also trying to hold on to their identity?
Yeah, that is the question, right? That we need to think about collectively, as this idea that tourists come and see the best part of Puerto Rico, beautiful beaches, this sort of colonial gaze of exoticism, dance, rhythm, piñas coladas, but they don't see the other Puerto Rican. One of the things that happens also with tourism is that with the Airbnb phenomenon, the rents and how they're skyrocketing, they're displacing individuals. And it also triggers a conversation of what type of tourism is encouraged, because a little bit less than half of Puerto Ricans live under the poverty level, around 43%. But at the same time, I think that it's creating a huge sort of tension with locals in the archipelago.
And I've seen, and speaking of tourism and the kind of tourism that you bring, there have been some pretty intense headlines lately of tourists that are coming to the island and really acting badly, which has also fomented this tension.
Videos point to a St. Louis area woman accusing her of committing arson on a tropical vacation. Those clips show a woman arguing with staff at a bar just before authorities say someone set it on fire, and 2 other businesses as well.
Oftentimes in this sort of hierarchy that gets established, Puerto Ricans are seen as servants to this tourist class that arrives to Puerto Rico and that they can do whatever they want. We've always had gringo go home spray painted throughout Puerto Rico, but now I'm seeing more of that. And I think that event in Cabo Rojo and Boquerón, when that woman burned down those businesses, it really triggered these conversations. And then 2 days later, Bad Bunny drops this record, which is talking about displacement. And that's why I think that, Bad Bunny's not inventing the wheel with this conversation. It is amplifying. He is amplifying this conversation around displacement, gentrification, this sort of metaphor of the tourist economy in Puerto Rico as the only sort of engine for the archipelago.
So, Jorell, you've talked on many of the social issues that Bad Bunny mentions in his album. At the same time, the album focuses on lifting up Puerto Rican culture, having a good time, and hearkening back to the past. You can hear it in songs like Mudanza, for example, which is another sort of anthem where in the lyrics he vows to never leave the island. And there he's saying, from here, nobody's gonna get me out of here. I'm not moving. Tell them that this is where my house is. This is where my grandfather was born. So how is he using nostalgia to inspire this generation of Puerto Ricans? And how is it showing up on the streets?
I think that is also an ongoing conversation in Puerto Rico that is tied to displacement. A lot of people that leave don't want to. And a lot of people that stay are very proud to say that they are here in Puerto Rico and that they won't leave, right? It's an act of defiance not to leave Puerto Rico in these conditions. And I think that's what he's trying to capture there. In terms of nostalgia, I think that Bad Bunny, this is not the first time that he has used nostalgia. In previous records, he would talk about how great the days where he would get out of school and then watch The Simpsons at 4, play with his Game Boy, sort of this middle-class nostalgia that he articulated. Now it's more politicized. Now it feels more immediate. There's an attempt to go back to that past when we have displacement as something that could take it away. So I think it's a future-oriented record as well, unlike his previous records, which were in a past temporality.
And he's really using the personal here through this nostalgia, through memories, through this idealized version of Puerto Rico to make a political statement. Bad Bunny's tapping into the energy of a political movement with Puerto Ricans, wanting to change the status quo on the island. It's a movement that also has a strong desire for self-determination. What is this new political movement, the so-called No Me Dejo generation, and what's Bad Bunny's role in it?
Absolutely. I think that this record is a snapshot of the political moment in Puerto Rico, of the political conversations happening in Puerto Rico, and it's a highly political record. I think that Bad Bunny has not shied away from Puerto Rican politics. A lot of people are talking about the political dimensions of this record, but one of the things that I like to think about is that Bad Bunny has been political for a while. When Alexa, a trans woman, was murdered, the first time that he appeared in a late night show, he was wearing a shirt addressing the assassination of Alexa here in Puerto Rico. He also spoke against femicides in the archipelago, and he actually did a music video in which he was addressing femicides. El Apagón, which is my book, ends with El Apagón. It was a very political song about power outages. And so he's been part of the political conversation for a while. The Yo No Me Dejo, which translates to something like I will not let them, comes out of his lyrics in a 2019 song that was part of the protest movement that ousted former Governor Ricky Rosselló in Puerto Rico.
This time, many people went out to protest for the first time. Maybe they were afraid, but that fear is gone. Puerto Rico will not back down. Welcome to the generation of I will not let them. I love you, Puerto Rico.
And I think the last elections that we had in November were the most important elections in my lifetime.
In these elections, for the first time, a party that proposes making the island an independent nation came in second place.
Now, that is historic. And Bad Bunny participated in it. He actually bought banners out of his money. So he was intervening in the political conversation. And when there was the closing of the Alianza campaign, this pro-independence and progressive parties closing of their campaign, Bad Bunny performed. And he actually gave a speech there, right? And so we also had record numbers of young people registering to vote. In part, Bad Bunny was also using his social media to encourage young people to vote. So he was participating very directly in the political process. And one of the things that I think is that, Puerto Rico politiza cualquiera. It politicizes anyone because of the conditions. And I think that he is also becoming more politicized as time goes by because the situation in Puerto Rico is so dire.
Some people are saying that Bad Bunny is doing more for Puerto Rico's visibility and economy than any of the island's governors have in recent times. As much as I appreciate Bad Bunny, his music and what he's doing, I also think it's a lot to put on a pop star's shoulders. What are the limits of turning him into a political icon?
Yeah, and I think he's very aware of this as well. I think he's spoken to this in different interviews. He's just an artist, and he's politicized, but he is participating in this processes as a Puerto Rican, right? Because he is invested in his archipelago, in the future of Puerto Rico. But again, he's just an artist. I think in an interview, he was asked if he was interested in becoming the governor of Puerto Rico, and he said no. Because he's not interested in politics, right? And I think, that there is a danger in looking for a messiah. I come from the punk community where we say, kill your idols. I appreciate all of what he's doing, but at the same time, I think it's unfair to him to ask for, political intervention or to save us. But I think that it's very telling about how disillusioned the people are with the electoral process in Puerto Rico.
I think we just wrapped, but before we even cut off, I did want to know, what's your favorite song on the album?
It's ¿Qué tú te crees? It's like one of the reggaeton songs, and I can't wait to actually be in a club and dance to that song. So ¿Qué tú te crees? It's my absolute favorite.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. It's also just a joy to listen to.
Absolutely.
Well, Jorell, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming and talking with us today on The Take.
Thank you. It was great talking to you as well.
And that's The Take. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you listening to Bad Bunny from? And how do you connect his music back to your own context? I'll be reading through the comments to see what you think. And don't forget to give this episode a like so that more people can find it. See you tomorrow.